What if I asked you to describe your most meaningful lived experiences thus far? You may begin by describing when you first learned to read, or perhaps ride a bike, or maybe that time you learned to play an instrument in a band, or competed on that championship sports team, or maybe later yet when you got married, or perhaps when you birthed a child. And if I asked you what made those experiences particularly meaningful, I suspect many of you may go on to describe the pride and the joy and the wonder that you experienced as a result of having accomplished these things yourself, given your own skills, abilities, and cognition. Now, if I pressed you even further, you may go on to describe the deep, meaningful relationships that were so integral to these experiences. Now, these wouldn't have been relationships formed by simply relaying to another person after the fact what had happened. No, they would have been formed by having those individuals actually there alongside you in those moments to see, hear, and feel what you were experiencing. For me, one of those experiences was conceived over a shared cup of coffee in early 2023 and culminated in a rather unforgettable experience later that same year on September the 23rd. Allow me to set the scene. There I was, in a sea of more than 110,000 screaming fans, most of whom were decked out in white. We were cheering at the top of our lungs while hype music was blasting over the speakers. Military jets were flying in formation overhead, and fireworks rained down from above. Where was I? Penn State's annual whiteout, a football tradition unlike any other, and arguably one of the most electrifying experiences in all of college sports. Now, what made this experience particularly meaningful for me was that I was very fortunate to be able to experience it alongside close friends and family. We high-fived one another, we waved pom-poms, we radiated pure joy as each successive touchdown was scored. We were deeply connected in those moments through that shared, multi-sensory, visceral experience. Now, fortunately, I don't have to travel more than 500 miles every year to Happy Valley for the annual whiteout to be able to engage in meaningful relationships with others. I can do that right here at home over a shared cup of coffee. It's cheap, it's easy, and I would argue it's as effective. Yet many of us, myself included, are failing more and more to capitalize on these face-to-face opportunities. We're delegating so much of our lives to AI, whether we're logging into Facebook or Instagram to connect with family and friends, or chatting it up with Claude or ChatGPT to craft slides for an upcoming presentation or build an itinerary. I think we've reached an inflection point. We're all asking the question, how much of our lives should we hand over to AI versus fight to retain? Now, interestingly, Hollywood recently warned about the potential dangers of giving up our thoughts to another entity. In the series Pluribus, the main character thus far has fought vigorously to retain her cognitive autonomy, despite being incredibly isolated and miserable. But I suspect she senses that giving this up could be the beginning of the end. For while it may bring initial relief and peace for her, it's not going to offer opportunities for self-expression, trial and error, or ultimately upskilling. In other words, the gaining of new skills to build knowledge and improve performance. In fact, it's likely to lead to us becoming less skilled over time. And in fact, outside of Hollywood, we're already seeing evidence of this de-skilling. Within the healthcare industry, for example, physicians who'd only been using AI for a relatively short period of time actually became less capable of detecting growths during colonoscopies once AI was taken away. Within the aviation industry, pilots' cognitive and physical abilities degraded over time with an over-reliance on autopilot. Now, to be fair, in opposition, some may point to the potential upskilling benefits of AI, and in fact, there is research suggesting it can be used in the building of certain skills, for example, emotional intelligence. Researchers assert that it offers opportunities to learn and practice in a safe space without judgment. But let me ask you, don't we sometimes want and need the trusted judgment and guidance of others? Don't we want and need the trusted judgment and guidance of a fellow healthcare worker standing alongside us in the ER as we're preparing to make a potentially life-saving versus fatal incision? Or don't we want the potential judgment and guidance of a fellow police officer standing alongside us as we're debating whether to enter into a building that could contain armed assailants? I get it. These are extreme examples, ones in which most of us, fortunately, will never face. But ask yourself, in the end, don't we all want to be surrounded and guided by those with whom we've built trusted relationships? So let me pose the question, of all the potential things we can and perhaps should delegate to AI, do we want to delegate the skill of face-to-face relationship building? Presently, there's a considerable body of evidence across multiple scientific fields demonstrating both the physiological and emotional benefits of building relationships face-to-face versus through devices or with other artificial agents. Hyperscanning research, for example, shows greater neural synchrony when people are face-to-face. This interbrain coupling positively influences communication, understanding, and group performance. Hormone research involving oxytocin shows that it is clearly released within the physical presence of others, promoting bonding and trust. And through heart rate and breathing studies involving the vagus nerve, the nerve connecting the brain, heart, lungs, and gut, we know that it is triggered through face-to-face social cues. Making eye contact with another, perceiving their facial expressions, hearing them talk, and sitting or standing within close proximity to one another activates the ventral vagal complex, which in turn slows down our heart rate, reduces internal inflammation, and promotes feelings of safety. Now, we know that AI agents can certainly be reassuring and friendly, arguably a little too friendly at times, but they don't currently wield the power of a handshake, an embrace, or that magical moment when your eyes lock in on another's and there's the perceptible click of having made a connection with another human being. In short, we are a species that is fundamentally evolved through the close, interpersonal, face-to-face relationships we've built with one another. As humans, we generate, transmit, and receive signals from other humans in ways that machines cannot currently replicate. And these signals, in turn, influence our decision-making through feelings of safety and trust. At this point, one could argue we could throw out the use of AI and say, let's forget about all of that. But there is a time and place to use AI. There's an opportunity for us to benefit from utilizing AI in certain facets of our lives while still retaining primary control over things like face-to-face relationship building. Allow me to provide a few examples from a human resources context. Presently, many organizations have begun using AI to assist with recruiting. This has the benefit of enabling more efficient and potentially less biased reviews. These AI agents can now more objectively review a broader pool of candidates, including those with less stereotypical backgrounds, and thereby ensure that most resumes are at least getting an initial once-over. Likewise, job seekers are effectively using AI to build and craft resumes that really highlight and showcase their skills and abilities and create quite compelling cases for their candidacy. But what happens when you are competing against dozens, if not hundreds of others who have also built and crafted your resumes using AI? What is going to ultimately make your resume stand out in a sea of dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes from candidates who also have degrees from highly reputable institutions and perhaps even coveted internships? Unfortunately, it's often going to come down to luck or good timing. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to leave my career prospects in the hands of luck or good timing if I can help it. So what if, in addition to using AI as I just described, you spent more time researching the names of employees currently within organizations so that you could reach out to them, perhaps via a platform like LinkedIn, but for the sole purpose of making a connection, minimally to set up a phone call. Better yet, to schedule time face-to-face to meet for a cup of coffee. This in-person connection is now much more likely to motivate that person in turn to pick up the phone or send an email to the hiring manager encouraging that at the very least you be considered for an interview. Now suddenly that resume of yours, which had been sitting indistinguishable in that virtual sea, is selected. And what about employees? Currently working harder than ever in organizations. They're seemingly doing all of the right things. Many have begun using AI to attest and to address the speed, volume, and complexity of work that's coming at them. But yet, many still find themselves stagnating in their jobs, if not their careers. Why? I would assert that AI is still insufficient to advance in today's workplace settings. So what if, in addition to using AI to manage some of your daily work, you spent more time building those face-to-face relationships, establishing those connections with people both inside and outside your organization so that you can be seen and known as someone that people liked, someone that people wanted to work with, someone that people trusted. Now you go from just being a really good worker to a worker that is actually top of mind for leaders and one that they actually want to consider that for the next time a job opening or promotion opportunity becomes available. So where do we go from here? Whether we like it or not, many of our jobs will no longer be done in the ways they were 10, 5, or even 1 year ago. AI use, quite frankly, is no longer optional. It is now a requirement for relevance, if not survival, for many companies and their employees. But mastery of AI will not guarantee you success in school or an organizational setting. In fact, if all that you do is dedicate yourself to the use of AI, I can all but guarantee you will hit a ceiling for success, and you may even burn out en route to getting there. Relationship building, establishing these face-to-face connections is as relevant as ever in this era of ChatGPT. For as long as humans continue to run organizations, they will be motivated to hire, promote, and retain those with whom they've developed trusted relationships. Now, I imagine I still may have some skeptics in the audience here today. Those of you who are determined to bypass the skill of face-to-face relationship building in favor of building your people networks through online platforms and other technology-mediated tools. To those individuals, let me draw your attention to the skill of crawling. Now, crawling is by no means the capstone of human mobility, but we learn to crawl because it builds the muscle and the bodily awareness that eventually enables us to walk and later run. And so it is with other basic skills, be it math, reading, or relationship building. We're not born knowing how to do algebra, how to read Shakespeare, or how to develop trusted cooperative relationships. We must practice giving and receiving trust. We must practice collaborating face-to-face with one another in order to truly get good at these things. And thus I assert, when we fail to learn these basic skills in a rush to delegate to AI, we face significant risks to our future educational and career success. As I close here today, I want to encourage those of you old enough in the audience like me who can remember that ancient time before cell phones and social media to continue refreshing your relational skills. After all, you will be the ones onboarding the upcoming generation of talent in the audience today. You will serve as the role models for how to metaphorically crawl before walking and eventually running in today's workplace settings. For students here today, I encourage you to continue building the basic skills underlying many of today's jobs, including relationship building, before you delegate these things to AI. Practice at home with family and friends. The cognition, muscle strength, and confidence you'll gain in building these skills will form the future foundation for trust building, collaboration, and belonging in your careers. Plus, you'll also need these basic skills to serve as a check and balance on future AI outputs. And you'll get to experience that joy and wonder we talked about that comes from learning how and accomplishing things yourself for the very first time. I challenge you, if you've never tried it before, do something like write your own poem, craft your own music, paint your own picture, and see if these things don't feel fundamentally different than looking at or listening to AI-generated art. Put another way, looking at this AI-generated cup of coffee, sure, you can cognitively appreciate the warmth, tastiness, pleasure of drinking it, but it doesn't trigger the physiological response or consequently produce the joy that comes from sitting down across from another face-to-face to enjoy an actual cup of coffee. So I encourage you, put down your phones, walk away from your computers, and take the time to go grab coffee with another human being, whether to cultivate a new relationship or enrich an existing one. Your body and mind are longing for this connection. It is, after all, what makes us human. Thank you.